Well, it's one question that a lot of people say, why don't you ask them that? It's normally because the person I'm asking is a bit coy about it, but how much do you reckon you've won in your career?
Well, probably plenty. I should say plenty in my career, but I've spent it all as well, so I'm not, I'm one of them that hasn't held on to much. I've had a lot go through my hands, but I'm sort of, I'm early 50s now sort of thing, so I've had a good life. I've done some good things, I've been to some nice places, and I've been to some nice restaurants. So, but I've won plenty. I wouldn't say a figure of how much it is, but I've gone through a lot of accounts in my time, and probably a lot of good winning accounts, 100 grand plus on some accounts, and my Betfair account shows a healthy profit. So somewhere along the line, I've won a lot, but unfortunately, I've spent a lot going along.
So a lot of people, when they're getting into this game and they've got aspirations to be a professional punter, they'll be buying all the books on how to study form, getting all the computer software, all that sort of thing. Would you say from your experience that getting a good load of contacts and using information is just as easy a way?
Good question. I mean, personally for me, I mean, I've been involved in so many quick get rich quick schemes, and this system's working, that system's working, here we go, system's failed, now system 694 kicks in sort of thing. I've seen it all and had a go at most of them, but it all comes back to sort of, for me, getting a good set of contacts, working on information, looking after your contacts, because if somebody comes up with some good leads, especially in those unraced 2-year-old races, unraced 3-year-old races, and they're a good lead, I'm a firm believer of looking after somebody, so I'll go straight up to them, give them a few quid, and you've got to try and teach them as such exactly what you want. So I don't want loads of tips. I don't want somebody saying to me, back this will run really well at 10 to 1. 10 to 1 second is no good to me. I need winners, and I'll look after somebody who's going to give me winners, be it 6 to 4, 7 to 4 or evens. So a lot of it's about, educating your contacts over the period of years or months into letting them know exactly what you want. And if it isn't going right, read them the riot act. If they still don't listen, bin them. But if they, people come to me now they know exactly what I want, and that's something really, really strong.
So do you have to factor in what you're going to give them as a drink when you're having your bet?
Yeah. Oh God, of course. Yeah. Like some of them want 100 quid, 200 quid on and whatever. Well, they're not going to pay you if it gets beat. So you've got to be having a sizable bet built into your price. Before it's no good having 200 quid for them and 200 quid for yourself on an even money chance. You're taking two on, so it's a complete waste of time. So I do factor that in, but I think I look after people all right, sort of thing. So I'm quite a fair man. I like to think of myself as a fair man. So if I think they're due a drink, then I'll look after them. If I don't, then I'll bin them.
So how expensive has been sorting the wheat from the chaff out?
Well, a sizable chunk of my profits, let me tell you that. I have suffered some complete and utter fools in my time, but along with that, I've suffered some good people. Some of the costly people can be really, really, really costly. We've all laid the things that they say is absolutely useless and this and that and whatever. And we've watched them get backed in the betting and absolutely bolt up. It's painful to watch, and there's no quicker way to educate yourself than losing and seeing your P&L at the end of the day, and you know exactly who's told you what, and it reflects in that.
Do you just sort of keep track of that, or do you have like spreadsheets and that sort of thing where you sort of know?
I've tried. What do you think? You've seen me interviewed for a long time now, or for an hour or so. No, I don't keep track of anything. I've tried all that, keeping track of spreadsheets and stats, and I'm really not a stat man. And I know a good friend of mine is stat crazy. And he'll watch this interview and he'll say, well, you're completely bonkers. But no, I'm not a stat man. I don't keep stats. I don't keep spreadsheets. But in my head, I roughly know where I'm winning or losing, or who I'm following, or what yards I'm winning and losing off.
Okay, and I didn't know an awful lot about you before we did this interview. So one of my questions was, what are the do's and don'ts of form study? It's just don't, is it?
Oh no, of course. I'll have a form study, and if I'm playing in a race where there's a few runners, if I've got a good mark for one, of course I'm going to look at the second, third in and whatever, and have a look at the videos and study the form a little bit. I say study. I'm going to cast my eye over the previous runs, But I'm not a form studier. I mean, you know, most of the form book goes out the window, especially on heavy ground, unless you're a real form nut, which there's much cleverer people out there than me. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm the best form student in the world, I'm not. So I tend to stick with my advice is stick to what you know, and if that's working for you, and if you get the value, pull the trigger and get on what you can.
Now, would you talk about backing in maidens, would you have a knowledge of breeding and pedigrees and stuff? Was that something you look at?
Slight. I wouldn't say it again. I'm not, you know, people will say, oh, that's, you know, that's by this and that's by that and that's out of a so-and-so mare. Well, I'd have a rough idea, but I'd be a novice at it. And I'm not going to as well say that, yes, I know everything about breeding. I don't. You know, we all know roughly what goes on what ground, and if they're bred on American bred, they're going to run all right on the all weather generally. Pivotals go on the soft ground, don't they? Whoopie do. You know, everybody knows that. They're no secrets. So no, I'm not an expert on breeding.
Right. So down in the nitty gritty, you earn your living from backing horses.
Yes.
What are the do's and what are the don'ts of backing horses?
The do's are find your edge, whatever it may be. If you're a form guru, stick to that. You know, plenty of people are good at it and they stick to that. Lots of people I know stay well clear of unraced 2-year-olds and maiden races. For me, it works the other way. That's where my edge is. My edge is getting on at the early price that I know is going to be smashed. And generally, I think you'll win in the long run doing that. So the do's are find your edge, stick to it. The don'ts are, I mean, you can't say don't chase. We're all punters chase to a certain effect. They might say I never chase and I don't. Naturally, I'm not a chaser. I can walk away, but it's never a good idea to sort of chase. Although some of my mentors, Stephen Radford and whatever, I've seen him chase and he's an expert at doing it, and generally he's still going after 25 years. So I can't knock it.
Okay, you say backing in maidens, have there been any absolute disasters that you've backed? They've gone on to win the Derby or something like that?
Oh, God.
I remember Reference Point got beat first time out when I was a nipper.
Yeah, I once backed, I can't remember it was years ago, and I had a fortune on it. One of Mick Shannon's when Folkestone race was on, when Folkestone was still racing, 2-year-old. And it got beat first time out. I was balls deep, had everything I had on it, and it came out, and for the very next one, ran and won at Royal Ascot, which was heartbreaking. I've had plenty of disasters. I've had some good touches in my day. Backed a horse of David Simcox one day called Any Given Day. It was one of my best touches I ever had, sort of when I was up to my ears in something. That was at Kempton on a desolate sort of evening meeting when nobody was there. So I remember some good days and some bad days, but I've had a lot of car crashes and a lot of some good days as well.
No, I'm told also, as well as backing horses, you like a punt on the NFL. Now, you've got a good record on it, I'm told. Have you got a model or a strategy?
Oh, God, the models on the NFL. I mean, how many times are you going to hear this throughout the year? You know, the big syndicates and the computer bots and the this and the that. Everybody knows it. So many experts on NFL, aren't they? Personally, I think it's a complete and utter lottery. My take on it is, and the experts will disagree, but I've been probably following it for 5 or 6 years now, and my philosophy is just back the New England Patriots every single week, be it flat or on the handicap, on the money line. You're going to be at that pay counter so many times. All the experts oppose them every week, but I don't know, I tend to sort of simplify things, keep it simple. They're the best team in the league, and they just tend to win every week. Sunday night was a classic example, first day back, and they won by 30 points. So I'll be backing them again come Sunday, don't worry about that.
Okay, now you're in Newmarket. There must be a lot of shrewd people in Newmarket. If you can name any names, who would be the punters and the judges that you would respect the most that are active?
What, in Newmarket?
Well, just anyway, in the world, most people don't get to peep into the world of professional punters. So would there be any names that you could mention that would be...
I wouldn't dare. The real successful ones, I wouldn't dare. They'd string me up for mentioning them. I'm not allowed to be associated with them in public. But no, generally in Newmarket, there are some good guys, you know, that there are some astute work watchers that I've sort of got quite friendly with over the years.
So they still have work watchers? I thought that was a thing of the past.
No, David Milnes works for the Racing Post. I see quite a bit of him. Tony Elves used to work for the Racing Post. He used to be the Gallop watcher for the Newmarket correspondent. Quite friendly with Tony, sort of thing. They're all sort of reasonable punters, but the real sort of top boys, I have to keep myself. I'm not allowed to mention them.
Okay, very well answered then. Right, so finally, Martin, what would be the golden rules? The golden rule that a punter should always adhere to. This is your final word. So advice to anybody that wants to emulate you.
Unfortunately, we're all coming in a little bit too late, sort of thing. I think the golden days of punting are gone, but and it'd be difficult, very difficult for anybody that's starting out now to come straight in and say, I'm going to make punting pay. We've all learnt the hard way. We've all been doing it 15 or 20 years, but we have experienced some good days doing it. And now there are a lot of bad days. So, I'm not saying God help anybody that's starting in now, but stick to what you know. Try and find your edge and work on that edge and exploit it.
Brilliant. Martin Raymond, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.